But really good for people that in like a dorm in the UK or something, you know what I mean? Like that's perfect.
Right, and you know, there's applications for it. In Europe, feminized seeds are very popular because people don't want to, they have a tradition of growing their plants from seed. They don't do a lot of cloning. So in general, they just prefer that the plant that they plant be female, and then that they know that it's female and that they're not wasting time growing males because they're growing from seed. The reason they like autoflowers is because, you know, you plant the seed, you walk away. As long as the plant gets watered and gets enough light, 90 days later you come back and you harvest the plant. So they're lazy, basically, is part of it. And it's easier. But if you really want a grade A product, the type of stuff that would win a Cannabis Cup or any of these competitions out there, it's really important to get the best genetics. I think the best genetics are hidden within regular seeds that could be male or female, and you just got to find those keeper females. That's what pheno hunting is all about. Find the phenotype that you really want, and you keep it around as long as you can, and that way you can have a mother plant that just produces cuttings consistently of the exact thing that you want, especially if you're a medical patient and a specific strain works perfectly for your ailments or symptoms. You have any thoughts on feminized or regular autoflowering?
Well, I don't have an ideology about this, and you should do what you feel comfortable with, and what you feel is of most benefit to you, or what for whatever reason what you desire, rather than try to interpret all this ideological stuff, whether feminized seeds are better or worse. The big problem with feminized seeds is that sometimes they have some hermaphroditism, so you have to watch out for them. So that's a big problem about feminized seed. And as far as auto-flowering, I don't think that is really a problem here in Hawaii. I think if you want auto-flowering plants any time of the year, just grow some indicas and they'll start flowering here. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Pretty much? I'm not asking you. I'm asking, is that correct, that pretty much that indicas will start flowering if you put them outside? Because, you know, you don't have much variation in light. You only have an hour or two variation in light over the entire year as compared with high latitude zones. And so that I think the big problem here is getting plants to grow long enough before they start flowering. And in order to do that, I would grow sativas and indica sativa varieties. And the dry parts of this island and the other islands here are ideal places to grow pure sativas, because you have that long season to do it in, and you have enough light so that they can really express themselves in a way that they can't in high latitude zones where they don't get the intensity of light. So you could grow things like Colombians and other South American varieties that aren't popular in other parts of the U.S. because they just don't have the conditions to grow them. It provides great opportunities. And as far as auto-flowering, well, I don't think that there's a need for, as I said, for using auto-flowering plants here, because you can just do that by variety. Any indica variety that you choose, or any indica variety that you choose is going to start flowering any time of the year.
And if you do want to extend, if you do desire to grow bigger indicas, we talked about light deprivation techniques. You can also use light supplementation technique, which just means adding light. And it doesn't have to be the most super intense 1,000-watt light either. You can pretty much almost do this with like a floodlight or anything else. You just extend that 12 or 13 hours that would cause your plant to flower to 18 or 20 hours using that supplemental lighting, and the plant will stay in the vegetative stage.
To do that, actually, there's a dimer. That's a chemical that changes over a period of time depending on environment. And what happens is, as soon as there's darkness, the dimer starts changing over a 2-hour period. And then, depending on the variety of the plant, it needs a certain period of uninterrupted darkness. So, let's say in the middle of the night, a couple of times for even just a minute or two, the light went on, that dimer would go back to its original form so that you don't have to have the light on the entire period. It could just be a flash of light for a minute or so, and it changes it back, and the count starts over again. And that's, for instance, how chrysanthemum growers regulate chrysanthemum flowering, either using light deprivation, as Danny mentioned, or using prolonging light to stop them from flowering. And between those two, you can regulate when your plants are flowering.
So with the weather here in Hawaii, are most of you guys doing outdoor or a lot of people doing indoor? Show of hands on who's mostly outdoor or interested in outdoor?
And also, can you leave your address?
And I think greenhouses are very popular here because, you know, you can maintain humidity and also use those light deprivation and supplementation techniques within an enclosed space. To me, I find they're like the best of both worlds because you control the environment a little better than outdoor. You don't have the wind and the rain and the dust and things. And yet you're taking advantage of the sunshine that you guys have abundant amounts of, although today's not the perfect example.
One thing, since I was here last year, I've been talking to a lot of you guys, following up on stuff, and I've learned a lot about some of the things that are problems here with growing. And I've learned that a lot of people actually start their plants inside, get them ready, and then set them outside when they're big enough or whatever, in the backyard or whatever. One of the big things I see is the transition. Two things that I've noticed people do consistently, and it's just taking the plants from their indoor, like fluorescent lighting, and setting them out in the backyard. That's going to stress them out because the intensity of the light is so much different from the sun to the lights that you have in your indoor. So your best bet is going to be to put like a shade cloth over them in like the first 10 days, 7 to 10 days, and sort of ease that off and introduce them to that new light spectrum a little bit slower than just setting them out there. That will make a huge difference in the transition and the onset of the buds for you. The other thing I noticed too is give them, when you're taking them from indoor to outdoor, the plant's going to need a little bit to realize what's going on. So you don't want to immediately start feeding it bud food the moment that you put it outside. You want to also make a transition with that as well. So whatever you're feeding your plants, your fertilizer, you've got your grow and you've got your bloom, you're going to want to continue with the grow for at least the first week to 10 days to 2 weeks, and sort of taper that off as you bring in the bloom food. Mixture of that and the shading of the plant will make a much easier transition, because a lot of people put their plants out and they turn like the plant, like the leaves get crusty, or they start to look dry, or they turn super yellow, or something just happens and people are like, what the heck just happened to my plant? And it's straight up, it's just the intensity of the light and the UV and everything. So just, they make shade cloths, for a variety of different things, just you can order them on Amazon and whatever, but it's totally worth the $10-20 or whatever to do that. And just, cover them for like a week, just sort of transition it away. You'll see the plant leaves will start to raise up, they'll get stronger, they'll start looking real proper, and at that point you can eliminate the shade cloth. But try that and it'll make a tremendous difference, I promise you.
Do you guys want to talk a little about what are your favorite mediums, the most successful mediums and soil mixes, and also like what nutrient regimens you guys have been successful with?
I mean, to me, for outdoor, I think a living, soil that you just continuously improve upon with composting and sheet composting, where you're just adding stuff on top. Let the worms do all the digging for you. They, if you put fresh compost on top, they'll come up out of the ground and go back down. They're aerating, they're leaving worm castings, which is nutrient and all that. And you're basically using less and less nutrient because you're providing the nutrients naturally in the soil by composting. And anything you can add, organic supplements to that, and microbiology, beneficial bacteria, things like that. Compost teas are wonderful, oxygenated. You just put an air stone in a 5-gallon bucket with your compost tea, oxygenate that for 24 hours, use that as a foliar feed or a soil drench. That's always a wonderful way to feed and help inoculate your plants from disease and pests and things. It's a little tougher to do indoors. If you're growing indoors, you have to adjust a bit. People do, pull off living soil inside, but it's a little tougher to do. Yeah, I mean, I think I think the closer you can get to nature, the better. There's incredible hydro systems too that you can buy that are really good if you have a more sort of technical mind and less of a green thumb. Those work great and grow plants very quickly, and but you're going to be compromising with chemical nutrients, and sort of hydroponics is just less forgiving than soil. In soil, if there's a problem, you have a little bit of time to solve it. In hydro, you have just minutes to solve those problems. There's a lot of things to monitor that you don't have to worry about in a soilless mix, like the temperature of the nutrient solution, the pH, the parts per million inside that nutrient solution, oxygenating it, all these things that are extra added things with hydroponics, and they can be automated, but again, it really depends on what type of grower you are, and whether you want to do the closer to nature thing or the sort of grow lab thing, and it's two kind of different schools of thought.
I completely agree with Danny. As close as you can get to natural and organic, the better you're going to be, especially if you're growing in your yard or something. I mean, if you're taking nutrients like mineral nutrient fertilizers in a bottle and you're pouring it on your ground, I mean, you're basically killing the biology in your yard and all the beneficial bacterias and fungus and nematodes and stuff. I mean, it's just no bueno. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. Your best bet is to create compost teas from things off the land, and just use seaweed extracts and beneficial bacteria, bird guanos, things like that. That's pretty much my preferred method. Let's see here. I had something else here. I'll let Ed opine on that, and I'll come back in whenever.
Well, I just don't have an ideology about this. And first of all, everybody talks about the compost teas and not putting, and layering and all that, sheet composting. Nobody does it. Very few people do it. Very, very few people do it. And most people, what they do is one way or another, they buy planting mixes, and then they might put in their own secret ingredients into the planting mixes. But I don't even have an ideology about that. I don't have an ideology about whether people grow hydroponically, semi-hydroponically, aquaponically, or whatever. Here's my ideology. I do have one ideology about that. Marijuana growing should be fun, whether you're doing it commercially or whether you're doing it for your hobby or whether you're doing it medically. And if it becomes onerous to you, you should not be doing it. And the best way for it to become onerous is to do it in a way that you feel that you're not comfortable with. So, whatever method you choose, whether it's hydroponic, soil, planting mix, whatever, you should feel comfortable with it. And if you feel comfortable with it, you're likely to have a successful crop. If you don't feel comfortable with it, you're not going to give it the care that it needs. It's going to be onerous. Don't do that. Even trying to get a little bit more product at the cost of your enjoyment is not worth it.
I knew you'd remind me of what I was going to say. There's one consideration about the medium that you use, and it's almost like your lifestyle. Like, how much time do you have in your day after you get to work and all that stuff to work in your garden? Different factors will change this. If you're using hydroponics, that's going to take a lot more of your time to clean and change the water and to do all these things. But at the same time, once it's dialed, it'll allow you to stay away from the house longer than it would if you had to hand water your plants.
I happen to disagree with that. Hydroponics is by far the easiest method to use. All this stuff about that it's not buffered, there are many ways to do it where it is buffered. You talked about the cost. It's cheaper than buying soil. Every part of it is easier. So anything that anybody says about hydroponics, I don't know. Either they haven't tried it or they haven't been successful. But first-time hydroponics growers are very